I'm going to assume that worked, and we'll proceed.
Yeah, I did it.
Well, I can't again because Discord takes away
you can't hear it. I know it gets taken out. So
it makes things more difficult. Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It's probably August 1st. Who knows? By the time this episode actually gets started, and we're not being stymied by 100,000 things. And this is episode 886. I am James Jones. I'm joined by John Lindemann.
Great to be here, James.
Mr. Guillaume Vayette.
It's exactly 10:01 and 43 seconds p.m. and you know it. On August 1st. Because we're on Time.is and we're trying that for the first time and yeah, there was some bitching.
Moving on. And Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, hoy, everyone.
I was just gonna let you go until you finished, and it was like, okay, we're still going. All right, okay, cool. All right, so we're gonna do, hello. We're doing a podcast, and we're not recording on separate audio streams, and there's not two of us because we're not for sale. And by that I mean
John?
we are.
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
Absolutely not. You were trying to bait me into an argument.
He affirmed that it was great to be here. He did affirm that.
Time.is has absolutely riven this chat with
great to be here, and then you started goading me.
It was great to be here.
That's where we're at.
Now it's terrible.
Yeah, we're at the point in the podcast where you've tried to draw me out of my cave. So there you go.
Time.is has riven this long-running podcast with division. It is the Yoko Ono of figuring out when to clap.
It's fine. You could just count down from 5 and not have to go to an external webpage. But hey, who am I?
John, what comes after 3? I don't know. Tell me. All right, well, we'll find out together one day.
Mm-hmm. We'll make it.
No, we won't. This is a podcast where we allegedly talk about video games and get propositioned to be AI's prostitutes. I'm going to start off new business because I haven't had new business in, I'm going to say, 13 months. And I'm playing the newest business. And by that I mean it came out like 20 hours ago. This is Thank Goodness You're Here on Switch. And I believe it's also on PC. I'm going to start off by describing this game as aggressively British. And I don't mean that in the
colonial sense.
Colonization, take your artifacts and make you grow tea kind of way. I mean in the weird irreverence humor with fart jokes and but trying to pass it off as this is classy fart jokes. It's well, not really. There are a lot of dicks drawn in the background on things. It's that. We're dealing with this. Thank Goodness You're Here is, I guess it's kind of an adventure game in a sense. But it's pretty pared down. The plot is effectively not relevant, but I'll give you the setup. It takes place in this small town called Barnsworth, which is a industrial town, probably, pretty far afield from a major city. Looks like it's mostly a coal mining town. The game sort of dresses it up with lots of archival footage of what appear to be industrial coal towns from, I'm going to guess, it's hard to tell. I'm going to guess from the late 50s is where the footage that they use comes from. It might be early 60s. But this is a very, very small town. And it pretty much all takes place on the high street. So just all the shops that they've got. So the butcher, the pie maker, the butter shop, because there's a shop that just sells butter. I'm trying to remember what the name of it is.
That's not true. I mean, they were a bakery. Butter was
they
one
were
of the
a bakery, but the place is called Buttery something.
Sure. Buttery tarts or whatever.
What's the name of the discount store?
I admit I haven't seen the whole town yet, I don't think.
Okay. The discount store basically it was of the premise of everything is low quality, high price. I just remember what it was called. I just remember the name was very like, I see what you're going for in this kind of game. There is a store that makes very, very tiny meat pies versus their competitor who makes extremely large meat pies.
Yeah, big runs, big pies.
Big runs, big pies. I can't remember what the store that sells little pies is. But you are some kind of salesman. It's unclear. Basically, you meet your boss, and your boss tells you that you need to go to Barnsworth. And you start by watching a bunch of ads for Barnsworth businesses, and he just concludes that's a very silly place. But they have a need for whatever it is we sell, as his words. And you then defenestrate yourself to leave his office, which point he points out there's a door right there. And you show up in Barnsworth, and the Lord Mayor will meet with you in approximately 3 hours. And so you just leave and just wander around Barnsworth. And most of the time, you're confined to a fairly small area until you solve some kind of puzzle, or maybe it's a chain of puzzles that gives you access to the next area. And then you're basically locked up in that spot. So at the very, very beginning of the game, you leave the city hall, town hall, I guess, and you are immediately met by a man with an extremely high-pitched voice who has his arm stuck in a sewer grate because he saw a tuppence and refuses to let it go and simply requests you find lubrication for his arm. You are effectively stuck in that area until you solve enough puzzles that at some point your very, very small character, because there's a running joke that the character you play as is extremely small, although the degree of his smallness is consistently in flux. At one point, he's so small that he is able to explore a cut of steak. Actually, it was pork, but a full-size cut of pork. He's able to walk around inside of it. He's so small. In other cases, he's like, I don't know, a foot tall. Like it fluctuates for whatever the joke requires. But it ends with you riding a giant slab of butter across the town main hall to lubricate his arm so that he might free himself.
Right.
And a lot of times this just involves you helping out somebody, and that gives you access to something else. In the case of that, go ahead.
Sometimes the quote unquote puzzle is nothing more than just triggering certain story sequences so that
most of it is.
Yeah, because you see the guy with the arm in the grate, and okay, so that I guess from there. You try to look for butter, but the shop is closed, but you see the employee outside, and he's like, well, we gotta wait for that stupid locksmith.
The locksmith.
And you might have seen the locksmith earlier. He was waiting outside the pub that wasn't open yet. But now that you've talked to the employee, you go back to the pub, and it's open, and no one's outside because they're inside, they're drinking. And from there, there's a sequence, again, with the fluctuating smallness of your character. You go and you give the barrels of beer in the basement a good kick to because the beer otherwise has been flat. And then the kegs, you get sucked up into kegs.
Into a keg.
Yeah, and they're you're just swimming your way up, and you're smaller than the bubbles in the beer, basically. It makes no sense. Also, there's a kind of a it's almost like a dream sequence, because the locksmith has turned into a bottle of beer. He's talking to you, he's telling you about how he really needs his beer in the morning.
And the bartender.
Yeah, and the bartender.
Yeah, his exact words are, I can't do my work without my morning pint, which that's already a worrying phrase.
Yeah,
I wake up in the morning and have my nice.
Yeah, a locksmith needs steady hands, he says.
Yeah, so he describes it as to get his morning pint. He wakes up in the morning and has his can of lager, takes a big pee, and then goes and has his pint. It's wait, what? You have a beer to get your beer? Jesus Christ. And then you basically watch the conversation between him and the bartender as you swim up through the beer. And it's represented by their faces on bottles floating, and presumably because your character is swimming through liquid alcohol. And then you are ejected from the beer tap because, again, your size fluctuates. And he gets up and goes over and unlocks the door while he waits for his morning pint to be poured. And then essentially that opens up the dairy place. You're able to ride the butter out, lubricate, and that particular, I don't even know how to describe him without it sounding like I'm being offensive. But he's a very high-pitched voice, and he just like constantly gets himself in trouble. He's very stupid. Manages to pull his entire arm out of the grate and realizes it's a threepence, and he decides he's going to throw it in the well, which is just the hole in the ground he made. And then you get sucked into that, and then that takes you to the next area. It's not as complicated, to be clear, but it's a little bit like Goose Game in that you basically just move from area to area, and what the game takes you to the area. There's really only one way to solve the problem in the area, and then once you solve it, you can move to the next area, but you really can't go backwards. You're pretty much always where you need to be.
Yeah, well, you like the comparison, are you like making the comparison with Goose Game because there's a 2-pack that you can buy, I guess. I guess it's the same publisher. But I would say that like the Goose Game, Untitled Goose Game is more like physics based. Is more like you can cause more mayhem. Yeah, you can cause more mayhem than you can in this game, I would think.
I just mean in terms of how the progression works. Like you move into an area and you're stuck in that area until you solve the thing to get you to the next area. From a mechanic standpoint of how you interact with the game, it's wildly different. They're not very similar at all. But in that one respect, they have a pretty strong similarity. And a lot of times, like when you need to backtrack, it's not actually backtracking. You just loop around the town. So you just go to the next screen. That screen's already solved because you've solved it already. You go to another screen. That screen's already solved. Then you go to the next screen. And that screen is different than how it was the last time you were here. So what'll happen is like, there's a woman who's learning to drive and she can't take her foot off the brake. So when you walk past them the first time, the driving instructor goes, "Oh, don't worry. I also had this problem the first 48 times I tried it." Mm-hmm. And then basically she starts showing up in all kinds of weird places in the car, like wedged between things. And all she serves there is essentially just a progress blocker. Like, you haven't solved the thing here, and her car will mysteriously move. In fact, they make a joke about it at one point. I want to say it was Joe. It was Joe's Parked Trucks. It was a big panel truck, and the label on it was Joe's Parked Trucks, and their slogan was, "You'll never catch us moving." And when you clear the puzzle, the truck's gone. It's a lot of like weird self-referential stuff like that. There's a lot of surrealism going on in here. If you saw the direct, the game starts with those ads. That's the very beginning of the game is just from that. As one of the ads notes, they were selling peens, not quite peas, not quite beans, but something special in betweens. It's a lot of weird shit like that.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, there's a lot of visual gags. There's, like orange juice. Mr. Gulp's only pulp. There's, anyway, like the blink and you miss it, like it's ridiculous.
There is an area, like there's signs everywhere. Cause, it's a high street. And there's one that caught my eye that just has the words "funny sign" written on it. Which I feel like that was a placeholder, and then they just realized it was funnier to leave it. It is a very amusing game. There are I don't even want to use the word mini games, activities you do to help people out. So like you come across, there's a situation where you're with the fishmonger, and the fishmonger has been accused by, the person who's trying to fix the pie making machine. Oh no, trying to fix, what was it? I can't remember what machine that was. Another machine in another shop accused the fishmonger of stealing his spanner again. And you end up just having to wander into the fishmonger from through the plumbing, I believe. I think you come in through the underground via the plumbing. And you have to punch all the fish in his icebox until one of them spits out a wrench. He asks for your assistance. The "thank goodness you're here" was a line that a lot of the townspeople say. Is this display is looking rather rough. Could you clean it up? And you just punch it until all the fish come out. Until one of the fish coughs up a wrench. And then the repairman literally emerges from the ice and says, "I knew you stole my wrench," in a very cartoonish Scottish accent. Extremely cartoonish Scottish accent. There is a lot of like goofy voices and weird accents that people are doing here. There's a lot of men voicing women. Not all the female characters, but there's a decent amount of it. There's a lot of just goofy ways of talking. People saying extremely stereotypically British ways of enunciation. Like I want to say the main menu of the game, their choices are "get on with it," spelled I think G-U-T, or "faff about," and that's just the menu.
Right.
It's like, okay, sure. It's a very
well, the game starts asking you I forget the exact question. Basically, it's to weed out the people who do understand the dialect and the people who don't. I guess if you choose I'm sorry, what? Then it gives you subtitles that are in quote unquote English. Otherwise, if you choose like Rido or whatever, you get the dialect subtitles. Which is like the option that it gives you like in the languages. Like, and there are a ton of languages actually. You can get subtitles in French and Korean and, basically anything you would want. But there is like a different English and dialect option.
The name of the discount store that I missed earlier is called Price Shaggers.
Right. Yes. I remember.
Man. And their slogan is high on price, low on quality. There's a food cart at one point where it's just the guy who works it is just bent over, so you just see a very large butt, and if you punch it, he slams the door closed, and it says closed due to bum punching. And then, like, if you walk away, he'll, like, slowly start to peek out. And if you come near him, he slams it closed again. It's a very weird game. And there are more than a few, like, they got away with saying that one? Okay. Moments where maybe they bury something in the background that's, Not like super inappropriate, but just a little more than you probably would have expected this game to be from how it looks. It's fine being a little crass. There's an objective early on in the game where your job is to poison rats because they've taken over Price Shaggers. And that you come in, "Oh, thank goodness you're here. Can you get the rat poison off the top shelf?" And you just push it on the floor and walk. And she's like, "Perfect." And you just walk away. It's like, I guess they'll just eat the poison. I don't know. And then that leads you to an area I don't want to give away because the game gets super fucking surreal for a minute. There is a mission where you just slap a piece of ham. And then something very fucked up happens. Extremely fucked up and weird and surrealist and bad. And then after you exit that, you go to Raj's Veg Hole, which is the name of the produce store. It's such a weird game. It's so weird and ridiculous. And it's very funny. But like, you kind of have to be ready for it because it's not going to meet you halfway on its humor. Let's put it that way. It likes being weird. It likes being silly. It likes being a little bit crass, but not super crass. I want to say it's rated M, isn't it?
Oh shit! I had the page earlier, and I meant to check that. I don't know. Like, it seems to toe the line. If it's not M, I feel it kind of feels like it should be. You know, like there's a sequence where you end up in the meat grinder, and you end up like trapped in a sausage, but like the sausage is just coming out of the thing, and it kind of goes around all the place and just like lands on this lady's lap, and it looks less like a sausage and more like something that's inappropriate.
But then they save it because she draws a face on it and starts calling it her dog.
Right. Yes.
It is rated M for blood, crude humor, strong language, suggestive themes, violence. I don't think these themes are suggestive.
I think this rating is deserved.
Yeah. And like I said, there are quite a few wangs drawn in the background too. So,
I didn't even notice that. So that tells you just how loaded, how full the screen is of like ridiculous shit.
I've seen at least 2, and I'm almost certain I'm missing some.
Right.
Like to give you a perspective, the very first job you're given is to mow the lawn, and the whole time you do it, it's just 2 like I guess they're supposed to be daisies, 2 flowers, and this is a very cartoony game. So all the flowers have faces, and it's just 2 of them saying, "I love you. Oh, I love you," to each other the whole time as the lawnmower that you're controlling gets closer and closer. Like, you know what's going to happen, but the game makes you wait for it. And eventually you get to the other side and you just absolutely mow one of those fuckers down. And the other one screams, and then the camera just pans and there's another flower and starts saying, "I love you" to that one. Which is almost worse than if you had just plowed one over and they'd just been horror. It's like, they instantly changed. That's what you're in for in this game. And it's very funny. It's not very complicated. According to the NWR review, it's very short. But I think it looks amazing. Like, I think the art is really, really phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
I think the characters are all designed, like every character is unique. And not all of them are weird, but most of them are weird. And because it's a small town, they're constantly moving around the town because the time is progressing as you solve puzzles. Like, you start, it's in the morning, and I think by the third round of areas you solve, it's supposed to be mid-afternoon.
Yeah, as you kind of progress through the hand in the grate puzzle, at first, like, the guy is just basically by himself, but like as you kind of get through that quest, there are more and more people trying to pull him out, like people that you've seen in other places in town before, maybe, but now they're with him, they're trying to pull him out.
Yeah, and so then you see those people in other places. One of my favorites is when you do the little gardening exercise. Afterwards, the town gardener noted that you had a nice grip on that lawnmower. My wife could learn a thing from you. And then when you go talk to the guy who was watching, a guy who was just standing by, said, I can't remember what that guy's name is. I'll just say it was Fred. He goes, "Oh, nice firm grip on that lawnmower. Fred's wife could learn a thing from you." It's like, oh God. But then anytime you run into this guy, it's always a scenario where he can say that his wife could learn a thing or two from you. Like, and it gets increasingly like, what the fuck? Bro, please stop talking to me. I don't want to hear about this anymore. Yeah, it's a very silly game. Like, most of my activities are I just walk around punching mailboxes so the mail falls out. It doesn't accomplish anything, but I feel good knowing I did it. Or just stepping on bugs so they splat. There is a scene when you drop into a well and you are met by a worm who decides to tell you facts about being a worm, which include there's not a lot of career paths to being a worm. It's either the compost pile or I can't remember what his other one was, but it was like really fucking nihilist. It's like, Jesus Christ. I'm having a lot of fun with this very stupid game. It is one of the dumbest games I have played in a very long time, but it's dumb in like the very perfect way that you can make a stupid game. they really spent the time and energy to make sure that the game is constantly just force feeding you jokes, and it does it in a way where you might see a guy and interact. There's a sequence where you fall down a guy's chimney and it causes soot all over his room, and he greets you very kindly and says, "Help yourself to some scrambled bread on the way out," which is a phrase I was not prepared for.
Yeah.
And then he starts talking about how he's going to have to find the dustpan and clean this up.
Right,
and when you loop back around, you drop through his chimney again, and he goes, "Oh, fancy seeing you for the second time in one day. It just finished cleaning up." It's like, I'm back. And you just leave again. Your character never talks, which makes everything even more stupid. Oh, I'm having a lot of fun with this.
Yeah, I mean, like, I had maybe, like, 40 minutes with it, which was not quite enough. But, I think maybe I don't know. Like, Karen seemed to be enjoying it, too. But I think she was put off by the humor a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, how many hours are you going to have to invest in it? Is it like a 10-hour game, a 15-hour game, or 5-hour game?
I feel like when the game says you're going to see the mayor in about 3 hours, they're truthful about how long this game is.
Okay.
Yeah, like I think it's only like 2 or 3 hours.
Okay.
It's pretty short.
Yeah.
But I think that's right. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad thing. It's just funny. I think, you hear that and it's like, oh, it's a bad thing. It's like not a bad thing for all games. Some games you just want to play for 3 hours and you're like done. Okay, that was cool. That was a fun experience for 3 hours. Stuff like I think back to like Journey. Journey was actually probably a bit longer, but not every game has to be even 15 hours or 10 hours or whatever.
Or, there was that adventure game I talked about, Dropsy, which is probably like when I saw that it was going to be like 20 hours or something, I was like, Monkey Island was not 20 hours. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not enjoying this. It doesn't have any dialogue. It doesn't really appeal to me all that much. And fuck off with your 20 hours. You don't deserve this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's all I've got to say on this one. I'm having a great time, and I'm probably, if looking at how long people say this game is, I'm probably just over the halfway point. Which you could easily beat this game in a sitting, I believe. But that's probably okay, because it feels like in a lot of ways I'm really more watching the game than I am playing it, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, I'm moving my character around, but like most of it is it's just happening to him more than anything. And it works out in this game. Like, in some games most games that's going to feel bad, but in this one it works out. All right. John.
Yeah. So because it was on sale, of course, they've had a bunch of sales, at least on the PlayStation Store. So I picked up Street Fighter 6 because I was always kind of sideways looking at it, and was curious about it. So it was like 50% off. So I picked that up, and it's very good. There's a whole lot to it. Everything that you read about this online will say this is a very complete package, and I would agree with that. It's kind of strange though how you download it. So you download, Street Fighter 6, and so I booted up, and the way that they present the start screen is that there's 3 major modes. There's World Tour, there is the Battle Hub, and then Fighting Ground. So the first one you have access to, at least the first one I did, is Battle Hub, and that is sort of like the kind of PlayStation Home-ish environment where you walk in and there's a bunch of other people there and you can walk up to arcade cabinets.
We love PlayStation Home in this
there's no other way, there's no other appropriate way that I can describe these hubs anymore, because these...
But yeah, you have to describe them with the worst examples so they
Absolutely. Learn. Like, I think it's the only thing that does them justice, right? But like all of these games...
It's us with a stick whacking them in the nose. No! Bad. Stop making PlayStation Homes.
But Tekken 8 has this too. They have a hub area where you walk around in, right? So...
Oh yeah.
They all have, so many games do this now just because there's still this sort of you have to have a virtual area for people to do things in. And so this is no different. But this is actually pretty good. It's fine. It's
Roll
not...
up that newspaper.
Yeah, it's usually it's usually fairly sparsely populated, at least the server that I'm on. But that varies depending on time of day and whatnot. But you walk in and there's a central arena, and like a thing that's central to this is making your avatar. So you can make an absolutely hideous avatar if you want, and so this is an avatar is a fighter that you build yourself. You choose what they look like, you choose their clothes and stuff like that. And it's like many other sort of things like this, where over time you get microcurrency and you can buy new clothes and stuff like that. And, this builds into the World Tour mode, but in Battle Hub, you can use this avatar to battle other players. There's a central arena and you can go in and you can fight them. You don't have the complete moveset. I think that happens. I think you do get more movesets in World Tour, as you move through that story, but I'll talk about that in a minute, but, you would use those probably to fight. I'm assuming fight in the Battle Hub. So the Battle Hub is more of where you can fight other players. They also have like an arcade area where they have a rotating list of old Capcom arcade games, like old Street Fighter, stuff like Magic Sword, stuff like Sidearms, which is by the way I played through that tonight, and that is probably one of the hardest shoot-'em-ups I've ever played in my life. That game is absolutely impossible, and I have no idea how any human being would ever be able to complete it. But yeah, stuff like that. So, and they have, there's of course a gallery mode. So if you play one of these arcade games, it opens up the poster for it in the gallery and stuff like that. And it has a shop where you can buy different clothes, and there's like tournaments that they have, and so there's a lot of kind of community sort of stuff in this Battle Hub area. And so, but that is what you build your avatar for. So that's why you have that as part of the initial download. And so, but when I first downloaded the game, I soon realized that I didn't have the World Tour part of it, and I didn't have the Fighting Ground part of it. So I had to go and do those. I had to go on Reddit and figure out like what's the deal. Of course, I'm not the only one to have this issue, and people are like, "Yeah, we have no idea why it does that." So I had to download World Tour. I had to download World Tour and then download Fighting Ground separately for whatever reason, but that's fine. I have a feeling they might do that so they can update each of them independently. That might be it. But so the World Tour mode is where you take your avatar and you walk around Metro City, of course, from Final Fight. So this is a 3D version of Metro City,
Great.
On a little map, and it's actually pretty funny. There's like all these. There's a big statue of Mike Hagar there, and there's a Hagar stadium that is being built. There's all this kind of funny stuff and all these nods to like various, a lot of like Final Fight stuff, and along the street you can fight people from the Mad Gear gang, and stuff like that. But this is a full-fledged open world quest mode where you run around, where you have experience, you have a skill tree for your avatar, and you can fight other people on the street and gain experience, and you can equip different gear, and it affects some aspects of how your fighter behaves. And there's a whole kind of plot line, and a lot of it is very, very silly. You can travel to different, but the whole kind of hook is that you go through and you are mentored by all of the different fighters in the game, and so you adopt their style. So it's actually a pretty sly way of getting a new player to become acquainted with how to play with all of the different characters in the game. Probably not all of them, but a vast majority of them. So, first off, so the conceit is that you become the mentor of this new character that you run into. So, you start off with Luke, who is sort of the main character of this version of the game, and he's like kind of your mentor. So you learn his style, and then you can equip a couple of his moves. And you have 4 special moves that you can use out in the game world, which is pretty cool because the next fighter you run into is Chun-Li. And so you get to equip her style if you want. And that means that your character can not only use her moves, like her regular moves, like how Ken has the fireball or something like that. Like you can use all of her staple moves, but then you can also equip her special moves. But you get stuff like the I don't even know what it's called, but it's the hurricane kick, where she like spins around. But you can do that. What's clever is that you can do that because it's, you're in this 3D open world. You can use those special moves to do stuff like you can break crates on the ground. You can, use that move to, fly over to different platforms where you normally wouldn't be able to go. So there's kind of pretty cool open world stuff like that you can do. And of course you can climb up on tops of buildings and, there's, kind of find different kind of hidden things here and there. It's very, very cool. So you go around and you talk to all these different, you work through the quest, and there's also side quests as well. There's kind of a campaign and then there's side quests. You can go through and talk to all of these different people, and it's all kind of silly. And, because all of the characters are really silly, but you can also you're not always in Metro City. You can travel other places you travel effectively to the locales that each of these new characters are, basically the stages that they play on, right? So, this character, they're based in Rome, so you play on their Rome stage and you go visit them there. Not in a 3D version of that world, but you play on the stage. Usually you fight them, and then, after you fight them, whether you win or lose, you can get their style, so you can switch over to their style if you want, and then you can level up all the different styles. That way you unlock different special moves. So there's all of this stuff that you can do. It's a very, very elaborate mode, very well done, and really good for solo play. Whereas I believe Street Fighter V, they didn't add a campaign to that until much later, and it was probably pretty half-baked, But this really feels like a complete game where it caters to all fans, of course, and then you have the Fighting Ground section, which is all of the online play, ranked matches, casual matches, practice, training, all of that kind of stuff. And you can, there's some other game modes, like you have like an extreme mode where there's like just like funny stuff happens, during the match that you have to contend with. And you can also play those kinds of extreme matches in the Battle Hub if you want. And it's just silly stuff like during the match, a bull will run by and hit everybody on the stage. Just really funny stuff like that. And so you have, you can play combinations of those kinds of things, or a drone flies over and then you can hit the drone. Just really, really funny stuff. But yeah, very impressed with it so far. And, so I'm actually I do have a fight stick, that for Xbox. And, as a side note, I was like, well, I have this fight stick for Xbox. It's a Hori, like, I think Fight Stick Alpha or something, right? Really nice fight stick, but it's for Xbox. And so the other thing I did is, so that I could play this with a fight stick, is that I got an adapter for the PS5 to let me use the fight stick with the PS5, and I got that from a company called Brook Gaming, and it works like a charm. So these are one of those things where it's just, this company that you never would have heard of. Yep, there's a company out there that makes a very specific fighting game adapter for Xbox to PS5, or if you have a PS5 stick, they make one that connects to Xbox. And so Brook Gaming, if anybody's looking for adapters like that, because I sure didn't want to buy another fight stick just for PS5. That would have been a complete waste. But yeah, just plug it in. It works exactly like you think it would. You plug it into the end of this is of course a wired fight stick. So you plug the USB into this adapter, plug that adapter into your PS5, and you're good to go. So yeah, and also with World Tour, the one thing that they do let you do is if you have a second profile on your PlayStation 5, you can hook your fight stick up to controller 1 and then have your DualSense controller on player 2. And so you can run around the world with your DualSense controller, and then when you get into battles with players, you can use the fight stick. So it's a little bit clunky, but I mean, it does the trick. It works, right? I'm still getting used to the fight stick. It's fighting games with a fight stick versus a controller is just entirely different. I would liken it to playing a racing game with a steering wheel versus playing it with a controller. It's just entirely different because you have that physical, that kind of physical aspect to it, where, when you play with a fight stick, you're actually moving your fingers and across kind of like a plane to get to the buttons, right? You're not just like sitting there holding your hands in one spot, manipulating all the different buttons. So, but yeah, Street Fighter 5, I mean, Street Fighter 6, it's excellent. I mean, certainly I'm sure it's much better than Street Fighter 5. Yeah, and I just think it's much better for casual players. The one thing they also did add to is what they call modern controls. And those are somewhat simplified controls based on the old Street Fighter or traditional Street Fighter controls of, having 6 buttons. This maps this maps like a few things to, maybe instead of having to use 2 buttons to throw somebody, you just hit 1, things like that. And I think the community has actually liked that because it gets more people into the game. In other words, you don't have that barrier to entry that you typically have with most fighting games where it's like, yep, this is how you control the game. You don't like it? That's tough. If it's too hard for you, too bad. Capcom was very, very smart.
Good.
Yeah, and Capcom was very smart. And you can even play people online with the modern controls too, which not everybody likes, but, at the same time, it's like, okay, well, you want to play with classic controls. Technically, classic controls are better, I would think, overall. Like, they let you do more. Not that you can't access some moves, but I'm sure just like for more precise controls, I think classic would be better. But it's a good way. Capcom has put a lot of thought into this game, in terms of what more casual or single player players would like to get out of this game. And also
it's very clearly a response to 5.
It very much is, yeah. And also thinking like, how can we get those players that would usually be like, I don't know if I want to play like ranked or online or something, or get creamed. Try to kind of ease them into it, both by introducing them to different characters that they might like, because half these fighting games, like, you go in here, it's like there's like 50 characters, and you're like, where do I even start, right? With this one, it's like they have Luke, who is like kind of a like, like Ryu, Ken sort of guy, but he's kind of like that, but probably a little bit easier to play with. So he's kind of the main character. So that's who they kind of steer you towards early. But then, they introduce you to all these other different characters just in case you might like one or come across one that you like, but they do it in a low stakes way. So, you're not trying to, it's not like the first time that you play with a particular character probably won't be when you're going online getting your butt kicked by somebody. So they just made a really, really bunch of smart choices in how they executed it. And of course, it looks great, has really cool kind of visual flair to it. You have some other different attacks, like the drive impact attacks, which are kind of super attacks, and they look really cool because when you execute them, you have like these kind of orange and blue streaks behind you. So the game looks really good to play. All the stages are really, really cool. Like a lot of variation there. You have all of the different kind of things, like there's one in, London, England, and there's one in Rome, and then you have, like one in Brazil for like, Blanca and all that kind of stuff. But all the characters also are updated as well. So they're all like, Guile is like, this kind of, I'm so used to him, even really in like something like Street Fighter 4, even still kind of looking like a natural progression from his Street Fighter 2 days. But he looks a little bit more almost realistic now in Street Fighter 6 rather than, less cartoony and more realistic. Yeah, so it's really cool. So I've been playing that quite a bit. So yeah, hoping to play some more of that.
Cool.
That's it.
I gotta say, I'm impressed the degree to which Capcom responded to Street Fighter V. Like you talk about the what's the best way of putting it? How they've all the single player content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like that was a major issue before. Like they just didn't have single player content, and now they do, and that's really cool. Congratulations for them. Like they didn't have it before, and it was a major problem, and they looked bad as a consequence. Whereas now they're, this feels like we talked about it. I don't want any more fucking PSN network home shit. Mm-hmm. But at least they did something.
Yeah. Well, and also too, I mean, in the fighting ground part of the game too, that has all of the normal stuff. Like you can still play through a story with each of the characters outside of the world tour stuff. Like you have, kind of the typical, you fight 10 matches in a row and there's like a little storyboard kind of story for each character. That's there. Like that all is still in there. So for every character, so you can do the whole world tour stuff and then go through and still play through an arcade style story for every single character in the game. And I'll say too, also, it has, the typical stuff, has a battle pass, gotta have a battle pass. So has a battle pass, $5 a month or I'm not totally sure how long it runs, but it does have a battle pass for $5. And it's just like, stuff that you can, like, different clothing that you can equip on your character and stuff like that. Various things or, stuff like that. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff. I mean, this game is jam packed with stuff, and it has, cross network play, so you can play against PC. You can choose to only play on your platform, or you can get, PC people, Xbox, PSN in the mix. So yeah, there's just all kinds of stuff in here. It's really, really good. Really, really impressive. And I'm sure it got excellent reviews on Metacritic as well it should.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
also,
good.
but it also makes you just wonder what they were really thinking with Street Fighter V. Like, I don't know what they gained from it. I don't know what they gained from it.
So, I mean, so we know what it was. The Capcom fighting game tour was about to start its new season, and the game had to be out. Mm-hmm. Like, it had to be out, or it couldn't be the main feature of their own esports tour.
Yeah.
And so they released what they had, and what they had was basically the online mode.
Yeah.
And that was it. And of course they had the whole fight money thing, and they patched in a bunch of stuff as it went, but as a single player game, there was effectively the ladder and the training mode. Mm-hmm. That's it. And then they added like some really bare bones story content at some point, and then they added more stuff later. But I think they felt like their bread was buttered in the fighting games, in the esports space, and I think what we've learned is that, broadly speaking, that's not the case for any game. Yeah. Like, you don't make your money off the esports players. You make your money off the broader audience, especially if your mechanism is selling the game. And if you're making your money through microtransactions or whatever, maybe. But, like, Street Fighter was a fully priced product that then sold you characters. But they had to sell you the game first. And, yeah, I think there was a significant portion of the audience that said not interested. Mm-hmm. But also, it had that weird PlayStation exclusivity thing going on.
Yep.
Which I think was it was a bad decision. Even though that was a PS4 versus PS3, it was less calamitous. Mm-hmm. But I think that turned some people off.
Yeah.
And like Capcom just made a bunch of really bad calls in the service of one end of their business, which was their esports space, and I think they've backed away from they haven't backed away from esports, but they recognize that a game cannot be successful on the back of its esports components alone. It has to be a broad product.
Yeah, because there's a whole bunch of people that just will not care about it if it's only esports. Like, if it's only playing online, well, there's a whole bunch of people that will not want to do that.
I won't. I will not buy if you tell me your fighting game only really has online modes and then just like basic ladder, I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
Like, I have no interest in playing a fighting game online. I know I'm shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and I'm not going to get better getting my ass kicked every single round. Like, like the idea of, you have to play online to get better. No, you don't. If you just get your absolutely destroyed every time, you're not going to get better.
Yeah, no, you're not going to get better. You're going to get better through the single player modes, and then you're going to go online and you see how different it is, and then you adjust from there. But you have to have that foundation of skill, at least knowing a character's moves well enough to counter somebody else's moves.
Exhumed, Why am I blanking on the actual name of the franchise? Exert is the sequel in. An Exert sign.
Is it BlazBlue?
Is it BlazBlue?
Guilty Gear, right?
Guilty Gear.
It's Guilty Gear. Yeah.
Guilty Gear.
Guilty Gear has these really, really sophisticated, like, I want to learn to fight game, please. And that, to me, that was the best, except for when I was really young and was kind of okay at a couple fighting games. Like, that was pretty much as good as I've ever felt about I'm learning things in a game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually learning a fighting game. And I would not have been able to learn that online because it beat it into you through repetition. Yeah. Do this thing. I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to show you why you might want to do it. Yeah. Here's the scenarios in which it's useful.
Yeah, it's like you don't learn karate by entering a karate tournament. Like in real life. That when you think about it that way, like how you would learn something like that in real life, you would say, okay, well, I would go to, some dojo or something, and I would get somebody to teach me over several years before I would even think of entering a tournament. Well, this is kind of the equivalent of that.
Yeah, like the only fighting game I ever got even kind of sort of a maybe okay at was Sam Show, and I got kind of okay at it because it was in the arcade that my mall had when I was a very small child, which is like so many dated statements. The arcade at my mall. And there were people there who played it, and I got, literally, I think twice I went there, and somebody was like, let me show you what you need to do here. Mm-hmm. Here's how you should play this game. And, that's how people used to exchange information. They were playing in person. They were able to talk to each other, and, I'm going to show you how to get better at this thing.
Yeah.
But, yeah, fucking Sam Show, man. You don't have to be good at Sam Show. You have to be good for about 30 seconds, and then the game is over. So, I want to congratulate SNK for coming up with the way of, what if we had a fighting game where rounds can be, 12 seconds long? It's going to get more quarters in this machine.
Yeah.
It's fucking genius. Genius.
So Street Fighter 6 has a 92 on Metacritic, which is, these days, that is really, really good. I mean, and I would say, and I would agree with it. I mean, you play it and you're like, wow, this is a fully fledged game. This is a game that you can play for years and years and years and years. This can be your main fighting game and just carry you for the next 3-4 years, probably.
I'm curious how 5 was reviewed when it came out. I really can't remember.
Yeah, I think
a lot of outlets did that. We're just not going to score it because there's just nothing here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of Street Fighter and SNK, by the way, there's Street Fighter. What was the SNK Street Fighter crossover called?
There was 2, wasn't there? That's the thing, because obviously you had,
SNK versus Capcom was the Capcom produced one, and then there's
SVC Chaos.
SVC Chaos.
The re-release was the SNK side, although SNK was going bankrupt at that point. So
it's a weird game. It's so weird. It is an absolutely fucking absurd game. Capcom versus SNK was the other one. The Fight of the Millennium. They're the other way around. So yeah, SVC Chaos just came out on Switch this month, or last month now. It's fucking strange. This is the best way to describe it. I'm very interested in seeing what that game looks like, because I haven't seen it since it came out back in arcades, and I remember thinking, this is a weird game.
Yeah, by the way, the original Street Fighter V got a 77. Subsequent versions got better, like the Champion Edition. So that came out in 2016, was the original Street Fighter V. That got a 77. Then they released Street Fighter V Champion Edition. That was in 2020. That got an 82. And then the final version of it, Street Fighter V Arcade Edition, got an 87. So,
because it grew into a full-featured game.
Right. Well, So the final actually reversed that. It went Street Fighter V Arcade Edition, then Champion Edition. So it went 77, 87, 82. So it basically it got into the 80s by the time they were done. It was in the 80s. But again, that took 4 years. For them to really get it where it probably should have been at launch. So
I'm gonna go main SNK versus Capcom SVC Chaos. That's gonna be my new main. I'm just I'm gonna take that all the way to. What do you mean they don't play this game at Evo? What? Shit. Playing some fucking French bread bullshit at Evo. What? No, you don't have time for SVC chaos? Come on. I want to be Dmitry Maximov and beat up Shinakuma. Or Terry, I'm just gonna fucking put Kyo Kusanagi's face into the ground as Balrog. Fuck it. I'll be honest, I was probably being Athena main because I'm fucked up in the head. That's fine. It's fine. Guillaume.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
Yeah, so I finished PowerSlave Exhumed, over the course of the week, and it was great. And I always had trouble with sometimes having sprites that just didn't appear on the screen but could still kill me. But it was on and off. I don't know what caused it. I haven't found anything about it online, so it must have been a me problem, I guess. But also, or maybe not, it's getting harder and harder to find stuff that you're looking for online, I find, these days.
It is.
But it had like a cool series of the last few levels were pretty cool. There was a kick-ass low poly Sphinx in one of the levels. I really enjoyed that aesthetic. One of the final later powers that you get is basically you can float around. You jump, you you hold the button, jump again when you're at the apex of your jump, and you're just floating, which kind of adds a, kind of a fun dimension to the combat sometimes. And of course is used to traverse some of the levels and stuff. I thought that the game was kind of lacking in secrets, but it turns out that they were so secret that I just didn't find them for the most part. Afterwards, I looked up videos and facts and guides, and I realized there was at least one secret, sometimes two per level. There's these little mummy dolls that you can find that depict basically the team that made the game. The Night Dive Studio people who made this remaster added more, they added their own little statues. So there are tons of secrets in here, and they're very well hidden. Sometimes they're hidden behind bombable walls that don't show an outward sign that they're bombable. So I found that a little bit bullshit. But most of them, there is some clue that there's something there. If you dig, if you notice something, maybe you should try some of them you can figure out on your own. Others, you kind of have to look at an FAQ. If you get enough of these little statues, you get special powers that you don't need to complete the game. So the first one, I think if you get 10 statues, you get dolphin mode. Dolphin mode is, you in the water, of course, you swim faster, but also you propel yourself out of the water, higher than you would regularly. And that is used to find more secrets in some stages. I meant to check this. Are there dolphins in or near Egypt? I kind of figured that there aren't. Is Egypt?
There are dolphins in the Mediterranean.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, so that's dolphin mode. And then there's, if you get, I think most of the statues, you can unlock eagle mode, which basically, instead of hovering, you're now basically playing a 3D version of Flappy Bird. Now, you if you keep pressing the jump button, you're going to gain height. Basically you get flight. But yeah, so I didn't pursue that. I looked at what was required to find all those statues. I thought, well, I think I've played this game enough, and I moved on to something else. But I was really happy having played this game. It was really, really good. And, I'm kind of in a mode of how come no one's talking about this? And of course, well, maybe it's because it's a 1996 game. and this remaster came out in 2022. That's why no one is really as hyped about it as I am. Either people haven't played it, or they played it 2 years ago and they're over it. But I would really heartily recommend it if you want to play an old school first-person shooter with a little bit of a focus on exploration. And from there, I guess I was just like so high on my old school FPS experience that I decided to get during that same sale for Night Dive Studio games. I got Turok. I got the remaster. I had tried a little bit the game on the N64 app, the NSO app, but I just could not get over the weird controls when you're using a Gamepad Pro. Like I tried to set it up so that at least I switched the left stick for the right stick to the left stick, and so that gave me an approximation of twin stick controls. Of course, because now the game was correctly basically on the left stick. If I was pushing forward and backward, I would move forward, backward. Left and right would strafe, and then you could look around with the right stick. But because the N64 didn't have two sticks, it had buttons. There's this weird thing where when you're trying to look up and down, I think I messed up my explanation of the controls, by the way. But anyway, standard controls on the left, basically, if you push up and down, you look up and down, except that it looks up all the way. It looks down all the way because they were buttons. They were not on the N64. They were not a stick. So you can't just exactly aim up and down. It was just basically to look up and down. And then I would get into the situation where just brushing, moving the stick just a little bit up or just a little bit down would send the camera, all the way up, all the way down. It prevented me from seeing what I was doing. It prevents me from actually playing the game. So I thought, you know what? I think $5 is probably a good price to pay for a remaster that has decent controls. And for the most part, I guess I'm happy that I did pay that $5. It gave me an initial pretty good impression, because you've got that first level. It starts out, there's a monkey that you're chasing after for some reason. I haven't looked at the story, but very quickly, you see on a cliff above you a cave with a tantalizing gun. Just a simple gun. Usually the first the game the weapon that you start with in most FPSs in Turok, the weapon that you start with is a knife and your bow and arrows. But anyway, so your first new weapon is right there at the beginning, just asking you to figure out how to get to it. And then there's a cave, an underwater cave that you can get through that will get you to emerge from that cave on the cliff and get that gun. And I was like, you know what? This is awesome. This is what FPSs are to me. They're just about being teased with oh, see this weapon, see this power up over here. How are you going to get to it? Huh? And then you figure it out, and it feels pretty great. So I had that good first impression, but then the structure of this game is weird. There are 9 levels, but they're so vast. I'm really surprised. They're very, very large. And I thought, well, maybe it's because I'm just going too slowly through them, because I'm learning them. I'm, I've got the map open most of the time. I like to explore every corner usually. But I'm figuring out what, there are switches to step on to open doors somewhere, whatever. So I'm still learning, where am I gonna find a switch to open this door over here? Oh, there are portals, like transporters. Like if I step on this, where is it gonna send me? Like I don't know these levels. I've never played this game before, so of course it takes me a while to get through them. But I just looked at a video of someone who clearly knows the game very well, who doesn't even bother with the combat. Basically, like he's just running past most enemies because like they know these levels really, really well, and it still takes them like 15 minutes to get through like level 3, level 4. So I can only imagine when you're actually like me, like an idiot, just like shooting at every single enemy that I see. Like, of course, it's going to take 3-4 times that amount of time. Like, it's just, it's a little bit like the game gave me a good initial impression, but then I kind of got tired of it pretty quickly. And, you know, like I was looking at a video of someone playing through levels 3 and 4 because I wanted to see, like, does this, do these environments change at some point? Because level 1 is very similar to level 2. Both are very similar to the hub, where you can choose where you select your levels. And I was like, well, if they're all these kind of jungle-y environments with endless bottomless pits and some ruins here and there and a few caves, and like if they all look like this, I'm not sure if I need to play through this entire game. So I kind of like ran out of steam eventually playing this game, but I'm glad that I did experience a little bit that I did. It's like I got to see some goofy things, like when you die, when you revive, there's kind of ragdoll physics involved there. Your Turok's corpse seems to just, like kind of ragdoll up in the air, and I'm guessing all the broken bones in his body are being unbroken. I don't know what's happening, but it looks very goofy. It's very, it's pretty funny. And, like it's funny to see kind of the quote unquote, the gruesome deaths that the programmers put in there. It's pretty common that if you shoot at human enemies with your gun, like at some point they're gonna hold their hand to their neck as like blood is just like pissing out of their neck. It's what FPSs were trying to do at the time.
It's how they were meant to be, Guillaume.
I guess I guess that's how they were meant to be.
Back when FPSs were FPSs.
Yes, and men were men. I don't know. Anyway, so there's that, and other than that, very quickly I've started playing Yakuza 0. Why did I start playing Yakuza 0?
In 2024.
In 2024. It's because I meant to do this. Like, I had been, my project after I finished Breath of the Wild. No, not Breath of the Wild. After I finished Tears of the Kingdom was to get through some Yakuza games. I started with Kiwami, actually. And then, right around the site.
Which is fine, because Zero's a prequel. It doesn't actually, like, they changed Kiwami a little bit to get some Zero in there, but they're pretty isolated.
Right. But yeah, I thought, like, I'm gonna play through these games in the order that they were made, because usually that's how they make the most sense. But, helpfully, right around the site, Melanie Zawaniak, told me that basically, Kiwami was like this budget remake that Sega made that does incorporate some elements of Zero, and was saying that they kind of botched their tutorials and the introduction of several kind of gameplay elements and some characters and stuff like that. And that actually Zero might be a better introduction in terms of like the game's mechanic and what it's going for.
It is.
Yeah, so that's really, really weird. Like the Kiwami starts you out like you already know 4 forms of combat, but Zero is the one where they introduce them to you one by one, and like they actually teach you, a little bit in what context you're supposed to to use them, but Kiwami kind of skips that because it assumes that you've played Zero first.
Zero is a huge success, and they assume if you're playing this, you played Zero.
Yeah, so it kind of leads to this weird situation where there's not really a great starting point for if you want to play like the story in order that it's been told originally. So yeah, anyway, so basically like I stopped playing Kiwami, I started Zero. I'm enjoying it, but I'm realizing that maybe I won't be getting through Zero, then Kiwami 2, then the rest of them.
Don't. As someone who's done that, don't do that.
Yeah,
take breaks.
Yeah. Because I'm finding that like initially, like it might be. It's kind of fun to see, like, oh yeah, okay, like a batting cage or like a baseball mini game. I'm gonna have so much fun playing through that, and then like I try it a few times. I'm like, well, maybe I've had enough of this baseball mini game. So some mini games are better. Like I do enjoy the slot cars and the dancing,
the karaoke.
Yeah, I have played. The karaoke kicks your ass the first time you do it. Like that's the first mini game that you're introduced to through the story. I'm assuming that you can tune it down. I assume the difficulty.
There's usually like a high difficulty to low difficulty.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure if it gave me the choice. So
it might not. It might not in the story mode.
Yeah, in the story, I think like you're meant to just not be great at it, and your buddy is like, "Wow, how does it feel to have no rhythm at all?" So yeah. I've played through Yakuza Like a Dragon, the first one with Ichiban, and I think that I like Ichiban better as a character, but Kiryu is I'm warming up to him.
He's a kid right now too. Like you're playing him as a literal child.
Right, yeah. But
I think he's like 19 or 20.
Right. But his character, as I understand it, is like he's very naive, but he's very serious, or he appears to be very serious at all times.
Well, unless he's in a mini game, and then he's very silly. But yeah.
Right. And yeah, like he's capable, but also, very naive and easy to...
Ichiban is explicitly stupid.
Right. Whereas, Kiryu, like, you look at his actions and you realize, like, wow, what a dum-dum.
But Kiryu gets smarter as the series goes on. He becomes very cunning and political. But in a world he doesn't want to be in.
Right.
Ichiban will never make that growth. Because Ichiban is an idiot.
Right.
Kiryu's just naive.
Yeah.
Ichiban is actually stupid.
Yeah, so I like Ichiban and his, lovable gang of losers. Kiryu kind of growing on me, but it's taking some time. And yeah, like the starting with Kiwami, like I guess I wouldn't recommend that to anyone because it's not great. It's not a great start. Like it was, it doesn't really show you its minigames for a while. Not before, like, there's this long extended sequence where you're infiltrating this funeral, basically, or something. Like, you're infiltrating, like, the Yakuza's headquarters. And there's this weird sequence where you're, like, it's almost stealth, but it's in broad daylight, and it's full of people, and it's only certain guards that are pacing back and forth that you're supposed to not get too close to, but also the game asks you not to run because you're going to attract attention. Anyway, it's kind of a mess. Like because there are some people that you need to go to and to talk to, but there are some characters that if you go talk to them, you can see like, oh, this is a character I can talk to. Well, if you do that, you get a penalty. Like you get to start over again because like this person figures out that you have no business there, and then they forget. And yeah, so it was not the most the best of. It wasn't putting its best foot forward, I guess. And Zero is a little bit more immediately engaging. And
the pacing of Kiwami is ultimately the pacing of the first game too. So like they were still trying to figure this stuff out. And it's obvious. Even the stuff they fix a lot of stuff in Kiwami, but it's still clear that like this is evolving out of what was the origin point for this franchise.
Mm-hmm. And it goes so fast over like who these characters are and what their relations are. Like every time that you see a new character, it's gonna there's like these big letters like, okay, so this is their name, they are the fourth chair of the Tojo clan or whatever, and then that disappears and you're like, wait, like, was it, who? And
take
like,
notes.
What's the Tojo clan? And like actually the game keeps notes somewhere. Like I need to go and study that because most of the time I had like no freaking idea. Like what relationship do they have with the Dojima clan? And is the Dojima clan my clan? I'm already kind of forgetting. Like you're throwing a lot of information at me at once, and it's overwhelming.
Yeah, and there is like a weird, if you're not familiar with what it's talking about, where there's like this hierarchical thing where it'll say somebody's like patriarch of family, and then it might list that they're a subsidiary of Tojo.
Right.
Which is like, oh, okay, there's like a hierarchy thing happening here. But he's a patriarch, right? Well, yeah, but he also answers to other people who are his boss. That like, if you don't have the context it's talking about, it's very, very confounding. I entered the series in 4, which is like maybe one of the hardest places to do it, because at that point they've blown all the clans open, and so things get really goofy. But yeah, I get your point on Kiwami. Like it is absolutely possible to start the series on Kiwami, but they did not clean it up in a way to make it as inviting as Zero is, which is a game where they very explicitly created to bring people into the franchise.
Yeah, like the story is more clear at the beginning, so I know what the stakes are. I know who the enemy is, basically, and now the game has set me loose in what's it called? Kamurocho.
Yeah.
And now I'm free to go be a producer for this director who is shooting it's nonsense. Like I just did
definitely
like
not Spielberg.
A side story, where what was it? Yeah, not Steven, but something like Steven spinning.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Or Magic Johnson. Not
Magic Johnson.
Magic Johnston. Yeah. Not John Six, that'd be a basketball player.
Right. But yeah, like he's like a stand-in for Michael
Jackson.
And
because it's the 80s.
It's the 80s, yeah, and so like you're as a producer, like this guy has a very specific idea of the video clip that he wants to shoot. So he's gonna moonwalk through the streets of Kamurocho, and you're gonna protect him from these zombies who need to attack him for real because he wants it to look real, and so you have to actually defend him against these people.
It's so dumb.
Yeah, it is, but it's very fun. The writing is really good. Like it's really I think the localization is top notch. These characters say a lot of nonsense thing that just fits their character very well, and so Zero I'm really enjoying a lot. But then I'm probably going to take a break once I'm done with it.
Kiryu does a nice job as a character of being aware and being a good foil for the audience when the really stupid bullshit happens.
Right. He's always like, oh shit, here's another thing. Yeah, but I'm really curious where it goes though. And so,
like he's a lot of times everybody around is like, this is perfectly normal, and he just looks at the camera and he's like, this is not normal. But I guess we're just going to do it now. And that's kind of the same reaction the player has, where it's like, oh, this is not what I expected at all. All right, well, let's deal with this problem in front of us, and we'll see how this ends. There's in the second Yakuza game, there's a very famous mission that Kiryu is sent to go deal with another family. And he stumbles across them as they are in a club that focuses on adult babies. So the entire gang that he's encountering is wearing diapers, and they are being served by nurses. And they insist that he participate in order to have the conversation. And he's just like, this is an awful idea. Oh, all right, I guess. And it's just that sense of like, I really cannot guess what this game is going to do to me anytime it gives me an objective.
Yeah.
Like, there is a glee that this game has in confounding the player that I don't think Zero does a really good job with it. 4, which was the game they made, 5 was the game they made before 0. 5 does a pretty good job of it. 4 does okay. 3's kind of dry. 2's Kiwami 2 is not dry. Kiwami 2 is nuts, but 2 itself I've heard is pretty dry. And then 6 is an apocalyptic degree, which is the game they made after 0, of just complete bullshittery and absolute bananas nonsense. And I'm going to describe it thusly. The plot would make a Leighton writer blush. It is fucking insane. And yeah, the whole time Kiryu's tired by 6, and he's just like, Jesus Christ. Oh my God, we're dealing with this. Okay, whatever. I do enjoy that characters actually evolve in this series. It's very nice. They either get killed or they grow up. And by the end you have sad, tired Kiryu who's like, World War II separatists. Great. Awesome. That's how I wanted to spend my day. Thank you for this. Yeah. Enjoy Zero. Zero has so much just side content. Just absolutely packed to the gills with it.
Nice.
Kiwami's pretty short, to be honest. I think it's like, you could beat it in like 15, 20 hours. Compared to 0, which like, is massive. Alright, well, we're going to take a break here. We're going to do a little bit of email when we get back, so please stay tuned. I'm going to count.
We can count down. Yeah, sure.
No, hey, I got time.is up now. So
right,
if you want to do it.
Do time that? All right, fine.
Fuck it.
Don't leave it in.
I don't want to be the old fucking guy,
Clap at 10. All right? I'm going to give you time to get your rant out. Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. This is the email segment. I'm welcoming you to the show you've already been listening to because I've been confused by our clapping algorithm that has sent us afield. We're using new technology here at Radio Free Nintendo. We're modernizing with the times and keeping up with the current trends. And by that I mean we're abandoning Skype in the year of our Lord 2024 and counting, which honestly, like, who the fuck needs counting in this time? That's what your phone's for. So we're figuring things out as we go, and it's pushing out the limited brain space I have to run this fine program. So fine that many AI have offered us many thousands of dollars to listen to all 2 members of it. Email. That's what this segment's about. It's about your email. Why do we ask for your email? Well, it's not just to keep the engines running. We need your email so that we have content to put in the show, because otherwise we have to come up with feature topics, and that's really hard. And sometimes they don't work out, which is disheartening. If emails don't work out, it's your fault, and we're able to wash our hands of any guilt that comes from it. So emails. Send us your guilt-free potential failure to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That's rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. Our email inbox is waiting for you and your free contributions to the show that we can then use to also make no money on it. And I will read the first inscription from our audience. Tokyo Massage Sessions writes, I can't believe I gave myself a Tokyo Massage Sessions email. Dear nerds. Rude. I'll cut to the chase. The following is a brief and highly abridged list of games that can be found on or are coming to Nintendo Switch. Aero the Acrobat. Aero the Acrobat 2. The shitty GBA port of Aero the Acrobat. Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel. Fuck. I can't even read these stupid things. Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, which is somehow an Aero the Acrobat spin-off. The Gex Trilogy. Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. 2 bespoke versions of Romancing Saga 2. 2 bespoke versions of Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3. Bill and Ted's Excellent Video Game Adventure. Bill and Ted's Excellent Game Boy Adventure. Bubsy 3D. And here's a list of games not on the Switch. Chrono Trigger. I believe my question is both implied and understood. Sincerely, Tokyo Massage Sessions. I agree. The answer to your question is...
I don't see the problem here. I mean...
I would say, I agree. The answer to your question is you should play the Gex Trilogy. Yes.
Yeah.
I understood your question exactly.
I mean, they don't like mediocre games on the Switch. That's what this says to me.
None of these games are mediocre.
So I guess what I didn't realize before it was pointed out to me in the Discord by Mr. Tokyo Massage Sessions is the Aero the Acrobat and the shitty GBA port of Aero the Acrobat are 2 distinct releases on the Switch. So I guess you get to buy the version that you prefer, whichever one you grew up with, but it feels kind of weird when other titles, other games will have multiple versions of a game included in some sort of anthology.
The interesting part here is that Aero the Acrobat sucks. That's not particularly interesting. But the GBA port is regarded as a shitty port of a game that already sucks. Which means it must suck out loud. This is Hoover vacuum level suckery. So congratulations to them. Yes, what broke me was the phrase, which is somehow an Aero the Acrobat spinoff, because that meant like they were still trying, and they're like, okay, I want to make Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel. It's like, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. So yeah, this question.
I grew up looking at the ads for these games, and it didn't shock me, I guess, but I hadn't, and I still haven't played Aero the Acrobat or Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, which I now know was like a title that Jules Wetcham worked on back in the day. I can't remember in what capacity, but
you shouldn't admit that.
I think these are actually, like, speaking of Turok, I think these are Iguana Entertainment titles.
They are, yes. They're published by Sunsoft, I think.
Yeah, Sunsoft, in the 16-bit era, which did not really distinguish itself.
Yeah, they had a bunch of games in Japan that didn't get out of Japan, like a bunch of games with Hebereke, of the, Euphoria sort of fate, like those characters. Like, they did a bunch of games with those characters in Japan on Super Famicom. I don't know whether those games are great. I think one of them came to NSO at some point, but there were quite a lot more of them. But for whatever reason, it was very much like, okay, we're going to have this stuff over here in Japan, and then we're going to publish, kind of license things and, stuff that's outsourced to, other developers, oftentimes, in America or Europe for those markets. That's just the strategy they took for whatever reason.
I am reading the plot of Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel. This is not advisable.
So who is this stand-in for like Dr. Wily or Eggman in this case?
All right. So Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel was apparently the rival to Aero in the first game. During the events of Aero the Acrobat 2, which came out roughly the same time as this spin-off, Zero receives a telegram from his girlfriend Amy telling him that, stop me if you've heard this before, an evil lumberjack named Jacques Lachettes is deforesting their homeland Stony Forest to produce counterfeit money Oh, and has also captured her father. As you do.
That feels like a lot of work to create counterfeit money.
Shockless Sheets is going to deforest a whole fucking forest to make counterfeit money. Zero decides to put a stop to Lashit's. Upon arriving at the island, Zero's plane is shot down and crashes on the beach. So he starts making his way on foot. During the journey, Zero learns that Amy has also been captured after an unsuccessful attempt to save her father herself. At the paper factory, Zero fights Lashit's and pursues him on a... Is this just nominative naming again? Is that what happened here? Is this man doomed to forever work in a paper mill because his name is Lashit's? Which is just fucking amazing. And then
I was thinking maybe they started it off as like a reference to Casino Royale, and then like, well, what kind of villain could you make out of somewhat modified Lashif? And then they came up with Lashit, and they're like, okay, what bad thing would he be doing? Counterfeiting? Do it. Print it.
What about deforestation? Great. I love it. So to answer your question, it is the series main antagonist, Edgar Ector, who's actually the mastermind. Sure. I like that the Wikipedia article introduces Edgar into this by going, Zero fights Lashit's and pursues him onto a flying ship. Aboard the ship, Zero finds the mastermind is none other than Edgar Ector. Edgar Ector has not been mentioned at all up until this point. But, like, I'm supposed to already know who this motherfucker is. So I think the answer to the unspoken question, which is which one of these games should I be playing, is Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel. So you can find out who Edgar Ector is and then write to RFN at NintendoWorldReport.com and tell us who that is. Could I Google it? Yeah. Am I going to do it? No. Why? Because it's fucking Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel. You cannot make me care more than I have already displayed care to read you the plot summary from Wikipedia. That's the end. That's the end of my ability to care. It actually got decent-ish reviews, but I'm going to go ahead and assume it's actually bad. Just because I feel like a lot of these mascot platformers that got decent reviews, when you actually go play them now, you're like,
Yeah, well, there was a time when even mediocre,
Crash games got good
platformers-
reviews.
Right. I mean, there was a time when these were the hot games.
They're bad.
So everybody liked them. So people kind of gave them probably more favorable reviews than they should have gotten overall.
If you thought the Crash collection was good, I now know how old you are.
Mhm.
Because you have nostalgia.
Just like Crash Bandicoot, like those games were not good. They were not good when they came out.
What do you mean? You don't like running into the camera
It's
in your
just
platformer?
Like I remember playing them at one point, even when like right after they came out, and everybody, it's like Crash Bandicoot was like the big thing, and they had the funny commercials on and everything, right? And I played like Crash Bandicoot, and I'm like, what? Like, what is the deal with this game? It's not even good. So,
I see a Ratalaika logo on this Era the Acrobat listing on the eShop. That is truly a red flag, the reddest of flag. Well.
Also, it's, one of those things, we've said it a million times, but to add to the second list, still have to, Chrono Trigger, good choice, but Symphony of the Night and Rondo Blood belong in there as well as
that's the real crime here.
How do we have all this stuff and not blank? Like they are right up there, but
Yep.
we've obviously said that many times.
I don't know if that's what he's asking. I think he's asking what to play after he finishes Quest for Camelot, which is what he should be playing.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
I guess that's the other thing that's really kind of amazing, I guess, is it's because we've talked about this with respect to NSO libraries before in terms of, why is it that maybe, certain kind of you end up getting certain games on NSO and why you don't get others, and how things have changed since the service started, where it kind of felt like maybe more publishers and rights holders were were willing to kind of put stuff on NSO before. And it's like, I think that's probably the biggest thing that's changed, and where you've got to now with these kind of boutique publishers doing like physical editions and digital on the side as well, or just other publishers looking for a bunch of old stuff to put out, is that this just seems to be far more willingness and belief, whether it's well placed or not is another matter, I couldn't tell you, that you can successfully monetize even things that have middling, or even in certain cases like infamous
Bubsy.
reputations.
Bubsy 3D.
That is, that's the state of play, that those things can be monetized. And whereas, when it comes to some of these like prestige things that haven't got re-releases, that again is a topic we've talked about, where it's just like, well, just get stuck in this sort of unhappy kind of position where those bigger publishers probably want to do something with it, or think they might, but equally it's kind of like they're not just going to do maybe something really low level with it, because it's like that's not really worth their time because they're such a big company. So it just kind of ends up sitting there, and then and we don't know when and if they will do something with it. But that's just the kind of strange place that you've come to at this point of what has been such an unusually long console cycle as well, when you're just looking at it specifically with regard to the Switch. That is another thing that just piles up the oddity of it all.
And then in the end, we get Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, which isn't even a game. It's like, I think it's porn, but I'm not sure. I've watched it front to back, and I still don't know if it's porn. It's a fucking VCD in game format. It's a CDI nightmare.
It's from the multimedia age.
Yeah,
that's what we were called. What we were told it was anyway. When I can remember stuff, I'm just like, well, this is not exactly. Again, like, how interactive is this? But it's just like, well, it runs on a PC or, some kind of, home video device, and it plays stuff. Like that's just the novelty of that at that time was thought to be able to carry the day. Even when in that case, I don't believe there's very much actual video at all. It's essentially a slideshow.
There's only one multimedia game that's worth your experience, and it's Multimedia Celebrity Poker, which stars it's just poker where you get video sequences from Jonathan Frakes, Morgan Fairchild, and Joe Piscopo. That's it. That's the only one that matters. Everything else was a disaster.
That is an alarming set of characters for that game.
I mean, who you think?
It is. There was definitely a salary cap with that one.
It's worse than you expect, and I've already told you Joe Piscopo's in it.
It sounds like something off of it sounds like the cast of like a parody show off of SNL or something like that.
I was thinking it sounds like something that Bart would get in an episode of The Simpsons set in 96.
Yeah, it's like it's something like that. Like
it's the ball is in parking lot of Lee Trevino putting challenge. It's like, but this is real. Yeah, like hosted by Dana Carvey playing Johnny Carson, and he has Morgan Fairchild and whoever else, those other two people on his show. Right? Like Frakes doesn't want to be there. It's very funny. Piscopo is as fucking annoying as you could imagine he is. Oh, yeah. That's the only one that matters. Everything else, all the multimedia games, the one that's like Leslie Nielsen teaching you to play golf, which is based on a VHS, that was a thing. There used to be VHSs that were like major actors teaching you to do something stupid and it'd be comedy, and you'd... Fuck it. Wait, think of like Tim Conway, like Dorf Plays Golf. Remember that series? Yeah. Our parents sucked is the answer here. It's ridiculous, man. Let me tell you, what was funny in 1980 is not funny today. No, I can tell you not. It's super not funny. It's really unfunny. It's nightmarishly unfunny.
Yeah.
John, you should just watch a video of Giant Bomb playing multimedia celebrity poker. It's a nightmare. It's actually a nightmare. At one point, they're just going, please make it stop.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only one we care about. So yeah, that will come to Switch probably in the next 3 months based on current trajectories. And so look forward to that. In the meantime, the Bubsy 3D is the game you should be playing.
I would agree. I would concur.
You should play it and then write us a report about it. 1,600 words or less. John, would you read Juan's email?
Sure. Howdy, former Dr. Jonathan Metz minions. After listening to you talking about how successful Goemon might have been in Japan to warrant a possible revival, I recalled that Goemon, besides having games for arcade, Famicom, Super Famicom, N64, PS1, PS2, GB, GBC, GBA, and Nintendo DS with over 20 titles in total,
to name the emissions,
also had a Japanese TV animated series as well as some OVAs, meaning it was quite successful in Japan. But, somehow, it still petered out. In comparison, Kirby also had a TV animated series and has continued to grow in even better directions. While I doubt there is any correlation, it made me think that many video game series have had their animated series and other types of adaptations with varying degrees of quality. We have a plethora of examples, like the multiple Pokemon adaptations in other media, Sonic, Mario, Halo, Castlevania, Mortal Kombat, Resident Evil, The Last of Us, etc. For you personally, what's your favorite adaptation of a gaming IP into another medium? My favorite one, bar none, is Lou Albano's IRL skits, which I consider superior to Bob Hoskins' performance. Obviously, he's talking about the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. I like Hoskins' Mario, but I prefer Albano's. While I share Dr. Metz's opinion of the recent Mario animated movie by Illumination, I still prefer the pure improvised and unscripted humor of Lou Albano and Danny Wells with the WWF wrestlers and other 1980s celebrities. Take it easy.
What is your favorite adaptation? I have a legitimate answer. Which is, I actually, growing up, I was very young, like 5, I don't know, super young. Really enjoyed the game show they made based on Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego.
Yeah, pretty classic. Rockapella, if you will.
And I did. But like, they actually spent money on it beyond just the band. Like, the hosts were good. The questions were actually treated like a lot of kids' trivia shows. I remember even at 5 or 6 thinking like, every kid who gets a question wrong on the show is the dumbest boy alive. It's like, how stupid are you? These are easy as hell. It'd be like, what is the capital of France? And they'd be like, fuck, I don't know. Rome. Wrong. It's like, execute that child. Execute that child on public broadcasting right now.
Get them out of
like, I remember as like a kid thinking like, boy, the kids on Nickelodeon trivia shows are stupid. Like, these were actually had some legitimate bite to them. At least I thought they had bite to them at the time. So I like it and it was well made. It actually, like, it all held together. It felt like a really strong adaptation of what the game was, not only what the game was, but like what the game was trying to accomplish. In a way that worked out really well. Conversely, there was a game show adaptation of You Don't Know Jack that was fucking awful. Fucking awful. Which is funny, because You Don't Know Jack is literally just a trivia game show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's set up to be a fake one of those. And then they made a real one, and it was fucking nightmarish. So good job, everybody involved. Yeah, I actually think that's probably my answer. That'd have been like 91, I think.
Yeah. I don't think it was 80s, but
I recently rewatched the first Mortal Kombat movie, and that I used to think was like pretty decent, and it was so much worse than I remembered. Like all the lines, all the corniness, like was so much worse than I remembered. The special effects do not hold up at all. And
I think a general rule with me is like, don't watch something that Christopher Lambert was in that you haven't seen in a long time, because he's almost always way worse than you remember, whatever it is.
Yeah, although in this, he's probably like one of the better parts of it. It's just like
you could sort of
low.
He's kind of he's amusing in his just sort of like off kilterness, I guess. That's how it is. I mean, it's been a few years since I saw it now, but I've seen it as an adult versus seeing it back in the 90s, and it was just like, this is quite a lot dopier than I remember, and
and like so it's been long enough that since this rewatch it, I don't remember like specifics about like lines that I thought were really stupid or whatever, but like what stands out is Miramax and Quentin Tarantino at some point decided to bring all sorts of kung fu movies to North America. And so, like, I saw so many more kung fu movies after Mortal Kombat than before. But that really highlighted just how poor of a kung fu movie Mortal Kombat was. Like, it was not the choreography, the fighting scenes are not as impressive as they seemed to be back when that movie came out to me. But so that's probably like the main flaw at this point. So
that's fair, because I mean, really, that should be what you're there for. I mean, everything else can be kind of as dopey as it likes, but if it delivers on that, the actual head-to-head fights and stuff, like that'd be. But I don't remember it being particularly good. No.
But in that same vein, I guess, with the same director, I actually kind of liked the Resident Evil movie series, but I'm saying this not having rewatched them, so it is absolutely... It's
CG
almost
ones, right?
No, I'm talking about the Mia Jovovich ones.
Paul Anderson is the common director.
Paul Anderson, yeah. I don't know, I didn't mind them, but I haven't played that many Resident Evil games. I've played the remake of the first game and 4, and, they're corny, whatever. I don't really... like whatever they did with the characters in the movies, I didn't offend me because I barely know them.
I think the first movie, I should say, I've only seen the first 2, basically, of the Paul Anderson movies.
Yeah.
The first one, does it even have any characters from the game at all? I don't think it does.
I don't think so.
It might be some sort of prequel.
But then the second one, it's like, okay, there's Jill from 3. She's just like, may as well be cosplaying, basically. Like, it's that literal.
Yeah.
And then I think there's other characters as well that are just, okay, now we can actually put, sort of characters that people would know from the game in it. And it kind of, I think it's mostly riffing on like Resident Evil 3 and 2 that were happening concurrently or whatever in the fiction. So it is like the first one is so loose. How much of an adaptation it even is kind of a bit, because it's not like Resident Evil invented zombies, to say the least. So, but the second one is definitely more of an adaptation. But having not seen it in a long time, I can't speak for its quality.
From the first, they decided, like, what would work really well against zombie dogs and zombies in general? Kicks. Kung Fu, actually.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got the mediocre Kung Fu of Mia Jovovich and Paul Anderson, but against, fleshy dog
But
things.
like you said, that was sort of, even though it's the same director, you kind of get in their different ways, because Mortal Kombat, obviously the arcade game, the whole series is basically, a Bruce Lee Enter the Dragon kind of rip-off, right? Mm-hmm. Like that was the genesis of that series. So naturally, when you're doing a film, it's going to be a bit of an Enter the Dragon rip-off. The Resident Evil is coming after The Matrix has just changed action films forever. And it's like, well, whatever your premise is, doesn't really matter whether it's like something that would be explicitly kung fu, like a tournament, or zombies and bioweapons or, crazy computer program. Doesn't matter. You fight them with martial arts. You fight them with wire fu, whatever they may be at that point. Preferably wearing shades.
Exactly. Like even, I never really watched the 70s Charlie's Angels, series, but I'm sure there was not really that much kung fu in them.
No.
But yeah, like, so, yeah, probably that doesn't hold up, but like, yeah, I enjoyed them enough. Like, the second one had Jared Harris playing, Jared Harris, essentially. But yeah, like, they kept up being kind of like silly and sci-fi and action-packed, and I guess that was enough. Like, I didn't really expect more out of those. But I guess, like, ultimately my actual answer, like, the best adaptation of a video game, like, has to be Fallout, the TV show on Amazon. Like, it's it really managed to capture the feel of the games, the humor, the mix of humor, like the weird universe of the games, and to tell a story set in that universe that doesn't really, some people disagree, but like that doesn't contradict what happened in the games, and it's kind of impressive how they managed to do that. Because I can't think of anything like that. I can't think of an adaptation that got it so right, not just for video games, but for like any type of adaptation. So yeah, it was really, really impressive and really, really fun.
Yeah, I'd say for me it would be The Witcher. The Witcher is really, really good. I say that having not seen Fallout. Fallout might be better than The Witcher, but The Witcher is just really, really good. Just very, but I think The Witcher also has a lot of good stuff to work with for a TV series, right? It's not trying to adapt some sort of cartoony thing in any way.
It probably also helps that Cavill is like a giant nerd, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Literally, he's really big, right? And also a nerd.
Yeah,
I was going to say with that though, because I've never seen it or played the games or anything, but I'm sure it wouldn't exist without the success of the video games. That's a given,
right?
But with the adaptation, do they actually draw very much from the novels, or is it strictly like, okay, this is what the games did, so we're just going to riff on that?
Well, I think that's why Cavill actually is leaving, is because they're kind of straying from the novels. I think in the first few seasons they have gone really closely to the novels, and they want to go away from that. And Cavill doesn't like that because he is a nerd. So,
yep,
that's pretty much the state of that TV series. So, yeah, but also the structure of the game lends itself to a TV series, just because you can have an episode around trying to find one monster, and the story
monster of the week.
Yeah, the monster of the week kind of thing, where, you know, how did this, if this person turns into this werewolf, how did they come to be that way? And you can go through that whole story sort of thing, while also having a couple of subplots that carry over from episode to episode. That's generally the way The Witcher works. So, but I do need to watch Fallout. I'm very curious about that. So I think I might actually move on to that. I just finished Ted Lasso, so I got something else to move on to.
I did want to add two other things. I've mentioned
kind
both
of very similar, Ted Lasso and Fallout. So
exactly.
Maybe you want to sandwich
right,
something different in there.
But
maybe
Ted Lasso in Fallout.
Yeah.
Two things I've mentioned on the show before. I really like Professor Layton and the Eternal Diva. It's so stupid that a fucking cinematic film stops to do puzzles, and literally brings up the puzzle card like you're playing on a goddamn DS. That's that's dumb beyond words.
I still haven't seen that. I should really get around to that.
It's really stupid, and it's got giant robots that people are in and don't realize it. There's literally puzzles that pop up on screen because fuck it, this is a Layton game. This is a Layton show, and it looks really nice. And then the other one I've talked about, he's on the show, is the Ace Attorney, and by extension also there's the Edgeworth Investigations ones that came out around the time the Investigations games came out. Manga that are not the TV show. These are explicitly the manga. They're written by somebody else from any other Ace Attorney. The only things this guy wrote were these, in that franchise, were these manga. And they do a really nice job of feeling true to that franchise in a way that makes it feel like I'm getting new bonus content for that franchise that I've consumed literally all of the marrow in the bones from. Even though I'm just reading them, it still feels like I'm experiencing one of these plots. Like right out of the gate, we get a locked room mystery of how this guy got murdered. And of course, somebody connected to Layton is the primary suspect. or not latent. Wright is the primary suspect. So, they're really fun. I don't even know if they're in circulation anymore, but they're really fun and really stupid, and just thumbs up. Excellent adaptation of the idea and applying it to a different medium.
Yeah, has anybody watched the Castlevania anime?
I've seen parts of it.
Is it good?
I've not seen the newer one about Richter and all that, but I saw all the previous one that wrapped up.
It's well regarded. Like my opinion on it's a little bit.
I don't really. I couldn't care about it. Like every time I try to watch it, I was just kind of bored. It's weird because it's very much like very dialogue heavy, but a lot of that dialogue is swears.
It's like trying to kind of. I think it's trying to create this contrast that they think people will like, where it's like it's quite like kind of low key, but then the swears happen. You know what I mean? Like, that it kind of punctuates the dialogue into, at least for certain characters. Like, there's some that are just more kind of aggressive all the time, I guess. If you need somebody to swear, Malcolm McDowell, good choice, excellent choice. He will swear very well whenever you ask him. But, no, I did really enjoy Bill Nighy in it. I thought he was great. I don't know what about it. It's just like, I'm really enjoying Bill Nighy in this. I don't know. It was, I didn't love it overall, but equally, it's kind of like, this is probably better than I thought it would be. But, it's still kind of like, some of it's kind of,
my attention would just wander. I don't think I realized that Bill Nighy was in it at some point, because probably like the main cast kind of made me drowsy. Like it
kind of came in like halfway through. Saint Germain, the character's name was. He was quite important while he was in it, but he wasn't in it at first. No, I mean, you can always rely on Bill Nighy. Obviously, he's always good. But it just, I don't know. He had a slightly different energy to quite a lot of the other characters that just kind of worked for me. But yeah, I think that was solid. So, I mean, that might have to be my answer, even though I don't love it, because to be honest, some of these things I've seen the adaptation and not played the source material. So that's true for The Last of Us. I've never played that, but I have seen the HBO series with Pedro Pascal. Fallout I would be interested in watching, but I've never played Fallout. Some of these other ones, I've seen I haven't seen the more recent Tomb Raider, which is probably better because it's got Walton Goggins in it and Alicia Vikander. But I saw the Angelina Jolie one, and I've never played any Tomb Raider games, really. So it's like,
The Last of Us is good. I guess it doesn't really spring to mind for me just because it is quite literally the game. So
sure, it's a really literal adaptation, which oftentimes is not the case, is it? With these things, liberties almost have to be taken, or even if they're not strictly necessary, people still do it because they're trying to make it its own thing, But in that case, it sounds like it is very much like, okay, let's just do the non-interactive version, of it. But I enjoyed it, but Castlevania might have to take it. I will say the animated Street Fighter 2 movie from the 90s. So no, not Van Damme as Guile, not that one. It's not bulletproof or anything by any means. It's been a few years since I've seen it, but I have seen it as an adult, and it probably would be better if I had seen like the Japanese vocal version, because I don't know whether the dub is that great, but still, it's like the animation is pretty like impressive from that era of before like some of the digital techniques would come in, but it still seems really quite lavish. I mean, the point with the Goemon having OVA, and stuff. And it is amazing how much Goemon product there is. Like I said, I own quite a lot of it, I don't think I mentioned the GBC game, that it's got a typically very, very polysyllabic Goemon title that's got dynamites in there somewhere, but it's actually quite good, that one. But, everything had an OVA in the bloody 80s. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah.
This bubble economy era Japan. It's just like, we don't know what to do with this money. Approve an OVA for something that, like, we have no idea whether it's going to be popular in some cases. I'm not saying that was the case with Goemon, but it's just like, it is amazing, some of the products of that era, like Akira, where it's just like, look at how incredible this animation is with those techniques. Like, it's just, it couldn't have come out of any other time and place.
No.
And Street Fighter 2's the adaptation is a bit past that, but it's still like close enough that, I do like that. And it does speak to, that kind of, that zeitgeist, of how big that, what an absolute phenomenon that game was, that isn't just in this kind of hideously bastardized thing with Jean-Claude Van Damme and poor Raul Julia. Good Lord.
God. Actually 2022, Netflix had 2 of them that were really well regarded. The Cuphead show was really well regarded, and Cyberpunk Edge Runners was super well regarded.
Yeah, that's one I want to watch. I forgot about that one, but Edge Runners was supposedly
Trigger
really,
makes
really
good shit. Trigger only makes good shit. That's what they do. Don't ask me about Ludicolo.
Yeah, I really like Cyberpunk, so I bet you I'd like that a lot.
Oh yeah. And the Cuphead show apparently really, really captures because it's a little bit of a snake eating its own tail thing. Because of course they based Cuphead on cartoons of an era, and they ended up making a modernized version of cartoons of that era as a consequence. But people aren't making those, so hey, turns out, thumbs up. There are some board game adaptations of video games that are very funny. I don't know if they're good, but they're funny. There's a Frogger one that's really fucked up in some really strange ways. But I think my all-timer is, there is a Pac-Man one where the piece that you move is literally a giant Pac-Man that gobbles pellets, that every time you want to play the game, you have to spread out across the board on every space. It's excellent game design that's not at all fucking tedious as hell just to set up, let alone play. I just appreciate the willingness to go that far as to make a mechanical pellet eater that players move around the board to eat pellets. It's like, they had no idea on how to make a Pac-Man game, but they had the Pac-Man license, so they just tried to recreate Pac-Man on a game board. We don't get that anymore, and I miss it. I miss that kind of just, I don't know, make it work. It's the same ethos that gave us Star Wars Episode 1 Monopoly, which is a real thing.
Well, there's also World of Warcraft Monopoly. I have it. I've never played it, but I do have it around here somewhere, kicking around.
That at least makes a little more sense than Monopoly based on Theed during Episode 1's events while it's being sieged by the Trade Federation. I don't feel like they were interested in buying individual pieces of property. If they had made Monopoly where that was the way of where the land acquisition was following the ethos of the game or of the movie, though. No, that's different. That's just Risk. That's just playing Risk. Cool. We're gonna wrap the show up here. As I mentioned earlier, emails are the free content of the show, so please make our lives easier. You want to make our lives easier. We do lots of good work and help people, I guess. Please just don't look at me as I'm trying not to laugh. And we could do more good work and help people if you sent us email to put into our show. That email can go to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That's rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. But, if you don't want to help save the insert thing here, then you don't have to send an email. But if you do want to save the insert thing here, then you should definitely send an email with a question or comment to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That's rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. Also, you can send your suggestions for what music can wrap the show up, and I am absolutely primed to hear. Greg, what is our music this week?
Well, yeah, it's actually one. who had a request in ahead of, I guess, we're about 3 months away just now from the return of the Mario and Luigi series when Brothership arrives in November. But one actually had a request in for the theme from the final battle of the Bowser Jr.'s Journey component of the Bowser's Inside Story remake for 3DS, which certainly on the basis of sales is something that probably not terribly many people have played. I'm going to imagine. I myself did not actually have either of those remakes, even though there was a time when they started selling them off really cheap, and I meant to buy like in a physical store. I could go and get them, and then the shutdown happened. So I mean, if that hadn't happened, I might have got them and played them. But then on the other hand, I do like those games in their original forms and have played them already. So, there was always a little bit of reluctance there. But, reviewers were a little bit sort of lukewarm on the sort of, those added like campaigns that they Alpha Dream tried to bring in to sort of, beef up the package, rather than just being a remake. So in the case of Superstar Saga, it was Bowser's Minions. And then in the case of Inside Story, you got this, Bowser Jr.'s Journey component. But in this case, what we have is more Shimomura, certainly at least in style, I would assume so, actually being the author of this, music as well, just classic, kind of climactic boss fight material here, heavily piano driven. This is kind of what she would generally go for with this series, and it stands up pretty well with a lot of the stuff you might know from games you actually did play. So yeah, nice to hear, I would say.
Cool. All right, well, on that, it's time for us to go. Bye, everybody.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.